We have a community section.
Yes.
Where and the citizens page is great about.
And then okay, so it'll be in there, and then some of the local churches may have it in their bulletins. And
Yeah, whatever
people
they,
know.
yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So we rotated it to 6 classes, just to reiterate that, 7 p.m. every second Thursday, and so the dates are there on that. The first one will be September 14th. So what we've done is, over the years, I've been fairly involved in preparedness, and now we're calling it readiness, so hopefully get more people to open their ears up. And so we've consolidated and kind of concentrated it down, and these will just rotate. We'll start over once we've gone through 6.
Okay. I was going to ask you, are you going to, the first 6, and then what do? Do you start over again?
Yep.
Okay. So you'll basically run it for 6 months a year and then have a break and then bring it back up. Okay.
And what we're going to do, though, is we're going to offer classes on maybe every other Saturday. One will be a CPR class, one will be a first aid class, the other one will be a gardening food production class. Those 3, we don't really want to focus on those on these meetings. Those will be kind of the extra longer. Those could be up to 3 hours, those meetings with workshops in them possibly. So we're still experimenting with that, but we'd get, those meetings would be, you'd get the fire department involved for the CPR training, those who want to. That takes a 3-hour meeting anyway. So for those who really want to go a little further into it, they can have those side meetings. But these are the main ones that you see there. So
Great. I like the idea. I like your approach. I think we're good. Let's get on the agenda.
Yeah, I would like to put that on the
put on the agenda for 2 weeks.
And one thing is, and if we're going to do that and have them waive the fees for that, one thing that I know will come up, because it's come up quite a bit with our flashing signs at the end of town, that would be one thing that they'd want to consider, is if we could advertise that on those signs at the end of town. I know other people, we've said, unless it's a city, sponsored event, but where this
Right.
one's
Community organized.
the
Right.
readiness and that which we're trying to establish.
Yeah.
Fine. We'll put that on there.
you have 2, right?
Yeah,
2
one on
signs.
each end of town.
Okay, that would be really nice. Excellent. Okay.
So yeah, we're definitely with you on this.
Okay.
We like the idea.
Great.
I think we can work with you. We can't do it, as far as the city and the liability, but absolutely. I think the community getting together and learning and teaching each other and being more prepared as a community is absolutely fabulous. More ready. More ready. Not more prepared, but more ready.
It's hard, I know. I did just a mental poll, and we were realizing not only just local events, but you always look at world events and you look at all these things, but you also look at, I started looking at people just in my neighborhood, find out how long they could go if we had a power outage, if we had, if there was no water for a few days, if there was how long they could last. And I know that you guys are working on a backup system too for your water, for those types of emergencies, which sounds really good. And so a little bit alarmed at how many people can last 2 days in a pantry. And so it's like, wow. So we're feeling the need. So
yeah, I agree.
Just a push again,
Yeah. And that's, if we can get 5 days and then 10 days, everybody, it's amazing. Natural disaster, earthquake, something here, we have it. And if somebody can live for 5 days without worrying about it, that's a lot less stress on the city and all of our emergency if everybody was at least 5 days.
For sure.
So, but I appreciate it.
So we're not going into CERT training. We're not doing medical stuff. We're other than that one class. So it's really a basic one, because I've noticed that if you go too technical, you'll lose people
Absolutely.
too. And if you're going too basic, then you already have people that are prepared and are ready, right? They're already ready for that. So trying to catch those that hardly ever are a part of these things.
So I think it's great. You guys have any questions?
Did you write all these, or did you get them from somewhere?
Right here, this list.
No, I've seen your handouts and stuff when I was looking at the information that you guys were given. So like your water storage, or how to purify water, or 10 basic emergency and readiness stuff. Did you guys write those checklists and stuff, or you found them from FEMA or somewhere?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's all common, actually most common knowledge you can find all on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And the products, you want to buy the products that are associated with these, guess where you go? Amazon.
Yep.
All right, so it's nothing exclusive, it's
Yeah, no, I
nothing
was just
crazy.
curious where you got it.
So FEMA and a number of other organizations, we've gathered, and I think we've whittled it down to just essentials now that are the most important. And
Yeah.
it's based on years of working in this and putting on workshops for many years and stuff, and doing an emergency preparedness plan for the whole stake. I was involved with, me and Doug Wilson. We spent 2 years putting that together. Instead of a book that was 100 pages, which no one wants to open a 100-page book on preparedness and readiness, right? And so they just stay there. And so what we did is we got it down to 25 pages. And so that's what you have to do, is you can't make it so that it's so intricate that you just don't want to open it.
Right.
You know?
And then you mentioned CERT. How come that wouldn't be one of your goals for all your team members? The CERT team going to the CERT program.
Oh, sorry, say it again.
You mentioned CERT, and why wouldn't that be one of your goals for your team members, getting them through the CERT training?
That's a whole nother beast, search.
It is. It's 17 and a half hours, but it's good if it's going to be good for the city if you got team members that could do it, because then they could branch out in the city and take care of incidents where the fire department wouldn't be available.
Well, I guess the question to me, what is your vision of that?
It's not my vision.
Because I
it's your
don't have it
vision.
right now.
It's your vision. I mean, it's community emergency response teams, and it's something that started in California because of
Yep,
earthquakes.
It
and
sure
stuff.
did. It sure
And
did.
it's spread from there into all 50 states.
Was it the Salinas or the North?
It's a 17 and a half hour program, so it's usually
Yep.
about 7 weeks, and they take you through everything from first aid, CPR,
Yep.
Emergency preparedness, basic structural collapse,
Yep, triage and all that
triage,
stuff.
all
and
that kind of
transport,
stuff.
yep.
So if that's a goal that you're working toward for the city, that might be something that you can consider here within Tokerville. The only problem that I can see is I tried to do a little bit of research on it, and it seems like Washington County's program, which is where it facilitates from, if I'm correct, hasn't had an update from like 2018 or something. So I don't know whether it kind of died or what happened to it. I did ask our fire representative when he was in
It
here
gets
before, and he
It's
didn't
gonna-
have any information on it. I think some of it was also COVID.
It gets revived and then it dies, and that's
Yeah.
the pattern.
Yes.
So in the early 90s, we got CERT training going in Tokerville, and then it died.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to bore you with why, but it does sets the pattern, because you're dealing with people that are doing it on their own time, their own money, and things happen, people move, and all these things happen, and so it doesn't go on. So that's a different beast that I'm not going to be able to handle.
Okay.
So it'd be someone else.
Just curious.
So yeah,
Okay.
we can just focus on those
Just
for
curious.
now. The essentials, and maybe we'll start.
And this,
going-
yeah, this might grow into something else. And
Yeah.
so
Perfect.
somebody else might jump on and take the CERT part or whatever. So a
Perfect.
different
Thank you.
creature.
Yeah.
So, all right. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, you guys.
Thanks, Leaf.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to get to our reports, city departments. We'll start with Matt from Ash Creek. Wayne, can you grab that? Wayne, can you grab that mic and hand it to me? Oh, Matt's got it. Never mind, Wayne.
Can use
Sit
this
down.
one.
Relax.
You hear me okay?
Matt's got a mic.
Right?
Relax, Wayne. Go back to sleep.
All right. Excuse me. I'm here to report. I have nothing to report.
Well, you got a lot going on over there, but
Questions?
That's a great
I'm more than
report.
willing to try to answer them.
so we're about 60% on engineering and design
Yep.
on the Confluence part.
Yep.
Okay, so that's moving along,
Still moving forward on that. So,
and we're hoping to get that done engineering by October, September. When do we?
so the first part of October.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
What is the estimated timing on, once plans are done, you can do some cost estimating and work on the funding or financing for it. What is the district expecting when they think they could conceivably commence construction?
we're beyond a lot of that. I mean,
So
you go ahead, talk about the value engineering we're getting with our contractor and the engineers working together and the pricing. Go ahead.
we're working with a company, Haskell. They are a contracting company. We brought them on to help us work through kind of the design. It
So
cuts
did the district
down.
enter into like a design build contract with Haskell? to do
Yep.
that? Okay.
Yep, well, yeah, it's kind of a design build. We don't necessarily have to go with them if we don't want to for our general contractor.
Okay.
So in the contract, it doesn't say that they will be the contractor. They will have to give us what we call a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price, after design is finished.
Okay.
And we can decide to accept that or put it out to bid at that point. With that, though, they do know all the design that's gone into it. And so it would probably be advantageous for us to go that way.
Yeah.
And just so that's kind of the way we're moving. Like I say, we don't necessarily have to if we don't like what they come up with. With that, they have helped us cut. So our original bid was over 43 million. We've cut it down significantly to about 37 million, just with their help and, the district and then Bowen Collins working together to kind of mitigate a lot of those costs. So that's kind of how the design has been going. We've been working together. Our what we call 90% design will be out in September. And then at that point, they'll give us a guaranteed maximum price, which will be in October. And then, barring that we like that price, we will hopefully start the first part of November moving dirt. So that'll be kind of the beginning stages. The construction of the buildings won't start till a little bit later, but we'll start moving. We're hoping to start moving dirt November 15th. That's the projected date.
Is there any components of it that's from a timing supply standpoint with long lead times or anything like that?
Yeah, there are. Like some of the electrical components are about 12 to 16 months out. So as soon as we get kind of approval for all the electrical stuff, we're still waiting on the electrical contractors to get all that figured out. As soon as we get some of that, we're going to try and get some of that electrical equipment ordered so that it'll be here and ready to be installed. But the full construction is about 24 months, so 2 years is about what it'll take. So that's what we're looking at. Any other questions?
It's a big project. I think it's a great project. It's 1.5 million gallons a day system. So we'll actually be able to bring part of Hurricane City this direction, all over Hurricane, all of Tokerville, and it's easily expandable.
Yeah.
So we can just add another 500,000 gallon a day without, so it's a neat design. The greatest design about it is when the water comes out, it's so clean, you put it right back in the river. So, but we're not going to do that. We're going to pump it up to the reservoir. We're going to save all of that water. So it's going to be great. The reuse program is.
Yeah, we'll have a few different options on
Yeah.
how we use the effluent finished product. So, but like Justin's saying, we'll be able to use it for, we won't have to fence off the areas that we use it basically.
Yeah, it's not like the farm out in Hurricane. Sure. So,
Sure.
It'll be a type 1 reuse is what it is. Not meaning that you can drink it, but meaning
Right.
that you can
you can
put it on lawns and stuff like that. It'll be cleaner than what's going on with the lawns at this point.
exactly. It'll be cleaner than our irrigation water. It'll be cleaner than
spring
what's in
water.
the river, cleaner what's in the lake. So, yeah, it's a neat system, and it'll be the first in the state like it. So we had to get state approval to even. So, anyways, pretty neat. The guys are doing a great job over there. Sorry to take so much of your time, Matt.
It's all good.
So, all right. Fire department's not here today. Riker, What have you got from planning and zoning?
The report. at this
Okay.
time.
That makes it easy. All right. We're going to move over to Afton. Hopefully yours is as short as Riker.
Mine's a little bit longer than Rikers. A couple of things. Just on the financial report, Keddington and Christensen, they will be here to perform our annual pre-audit to prepare our financial statements. They're going to come, I think, August 22nd. We talked to Marcus. So they'll be in town for that. And then just at this time, 16.7% of the year has elapsed. And we've spent 2.91% of the budget. We are working on a couple of different grants. Tokerville applied for a FEMA BRIC grant, which is Building Resilient Infrastructure. And we applied for a grant in the amount of $38,000. We made it through the first rounds of that review. So we're in the final stages of review. Lots of others got dropped off, but ours was actually selected for the final round of review. So we should hear back on that for funding in August. That is for an erosion hazard study. That's the first step in getting Ash Creek and Laverkin Creek cleaned out. And so that's the FEMA BRIC grant. So we're really excited about that. The community report, the Westfield Park update. We have fencing that is going up around there. We've got the dirt, the fill dirt has been brought in and it's up there. So now we're putting up the construction fencing around that. The restroom designs, they've got a couple of quick changes that they're making on that. And then we'll start construction on the restrooms. The landscape design is almost complete so that we can put in the sprinklers. We are asking people not to go over there and play. If you want to be on the playground, fine at this point, but we've got the rest of it where we're fencing that off. So just construction.
So we're going to put a fence around the playground. They can get access to the
They
playground.
can access the playground, but they won't be able to access where they're building the
Anything else.
restroom or anything else
Perfect.
at that point. So just be aware of that. TRE, the Frisbee golf signs, those signs are all done. They are putting those in on August 8th. So that's exciting. And then just also wanted to give an update that we fixed that Choya Creek, the bridge that it was popping up. So that's been done also. Tokerville Parkway, a couple of people had asked for updates on that. We all know that Tokerville, the phase A is going to begin paving. Phase B is obviously under construction. We've had a lot of people ask about the blasting. We'll know the blasting schedule. The blasting will continue for a little bit, but we'll know that schedule tomorrow. And we can start putting that on our social media just to let residents know. That was the main thing. So we are going to do a better job. I know the first two blasts went off and it was July, so fireworks. But it was, but some people watched it, and from Westfield and things like that. So it was pretty amazing. But anyway, so we will put that on social media just to let you know. The Westfield Road extension, that's under construction. It's nearing completion. So that project moved forward really effectively. Economic growth. On emergency preparedness, I'm going to just tell you a couple things first, and then we'll get into emergency preparedness. I know they're calling it readiness. Ours is still emergency preparedness. Riker has been going to some meetings for that. I'm going to have him report on that part. And then also just to let you know, the generator that we budgeted for, we should have that by the end of the year. So that will be here for City Hall. So we've got that. And then.
Real quick on that.
Yep.
We're getting a generator and then we're also getting a switch to
Yep.
cut us off the grid. So okay. Okay.
Yep,
It'll be
exactly.
all, okay, perfect.
Switch.
Yeah, transfer switch. Okay, perfect.
Okay, and then with that, also Riker's going to talk a little bit more about that in the meeting that he went to. We are actively pursuing a public safety board that will work with code enforcement and the county and the sheriff's office. We've talked to them. We've had a couple of different meetings with them. Along those same lines, I just wanted to report on, we're going to talk about this with the interlocal later on. We're going to talk about the interlocal agreement with the Justice Court. But along those same lines, I wanted to address, I've had a couple of questions about the vicious dogs that people are wondering kind of where we are with that. We were working on getting the interlocal agreement in place. Our code enforcement, we have someone that will be swearing in on August 19th. And then from there, criminalizing the code to the Class B misdemeanors. So we are definitely moving with that, even though it has seemed to the public like nothing is happening with these dogs. They are. We've had a lot going on. And so we appreciate the residents reaching out to us, asking us those questions. The other thing, so Riker, we'll go back to that in a minute. Just wanted to give an update on the general plan. We've met with Sunrise. We've had the steering committee meetings. A draft will be presented at Planning Commission for a public hearing, and then it will move to city council. So that general plan will hopefully be wrapped up by mid-September, the second city council meeting in September. So that's where we are with that, unless there is another required public hearing for city council, and then it would push it to the first week of October. But our Civic Plus web designer, we've gone through, Sarah and I've had meetings with them this week, so we're almost done with the city website. We're just finalizing the content now and the bios and council and things. So that should be live by September 1st, our new website. And then one other thing, actually, Riker, I'll have you go first about the emergency preparedness that you attended.
Yeah. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet with a couple of individuals on emergency preparedness. Specifically this week, I was able to meet with Jason Whipple, the county emergency manager, and was able to get some really good resources from him to start, give us a starting point to develop an emergency management plan, so that we can kind of start down that road. He gave me some good resources and some contacts to reach out to so that we can start forward on that.
A lot of grants are dependent on whether we have a plan in place. And so we need
Yeah.
to get the plan, then we can get some money to fund some of that plan.
And our BRIC grant goes right along with that, of that funding as well, for not just cleaning out Ash Creek, but stabilizing its natural hazard mitigation and erosion hazard. So that's where we are on that. Daisy, this one, the next thing I'm going to report on is the final item on my report. I went to attend a DTAC today, the Transportation Advisory Commission. And when I was there, we went over this. Sitla was there and did a presentation that was very interesting. It's about the Bears Ears Land Exchange. And when you're looking at this, if you just stay right here, Days, over in the lower right-hand corner, that is the Bears Ears Land Exchange. So this is a national monument. BLM is going to be doing a land exchange with Sitla. What was interesting to us is the land, particularly, they're exchanging land all over the state, but particularly in Washington County, and more specifically, there's land in Tokerville. And so I just thought it was important to bring this back to you as council. Daisy, if you'll scroll over to our section where we reviewed, if you go to Tokerville, just keep going over a little more. And then if you scroll in right here on Tokerville, and so there is all of that green. You can see these are where the land exchanges are proposed. So we've got them up here at Anderson Junction. And then Sitla's going to also be exchanging BLM land down. And so you can kind of scroll in just a little bit more. I just wanted you as council to kind of be able to see where it is on the north end that Sitla will be acquiring property. And then if you scroll down to those other sections as well, so that you can see west of Westfield. Something that was interesting, I asked him, it was Greg MacArthur that presented it from Sitla. I asked him when they expected this to be finalized, and he said it's been heard at Congress twice. It's with Congress right now. So they anticipate it being finalized by the end of the year, so by December. And then he said, of course, it's Congress, so it could be 1 year to 20 years. But I just thought it was important to bring that information back so that you could see that there are going to be, Sitla often, ends up developing or doing, exchange for development or things. So I just think it's important to know kind of what's proposed and what's coming down the line with this Bears Ears land trade. And you can go back up, Daisy. I think Anderson Junction is going to be of particular interest just because we've got, development in and around there. So just so you're kind of aware that Sitla's actively acquiring.
And on this map, the yellow now is BLM land, right? The yellow is yeah.
Correct.
So they're getting
The green is BLM.
Right, but it's proposed.
that's going to
to
become
Sitla,
the
the
Sitla, and then
Sitla
they
land.
can sell it.
They can sell it.
Essentially and do what
Yeah.
they want. And then what do we have any say in any of that?
It'll just be land inside Tokerville at that
Right.
point.
Okay.
Well, all of those that we just saw, those are all within current municipal boundaries.
Yep.
Okay.
Every bit of it.
So
So
that'll
we're
be
the
all.
land use authority. We have to
Okay.
approve anything.
Okay.
Sitla, in the last 10 years, I've seen them more co-develop with developers, be more involved. For a long time, all they did was sell land or lease land for development. And sometimes the leases, I mean, the vast majority of the money that Sitla revenue they make is through like mineral leases and things like that. It's not just the sale of real property, but we just have to appreciate that this opens up land that we had always, went under BLM control, had anticipated no development, no real effect on the city. Now there is a possibility of.
Okay.
So Days, if you'll scroll back out to where you see that, just to kind of help people understand. So obviously with Bears Ears being the national monument, and that's BLM land, when you look at that, when you see all of that, if you just keep going over to it, when you see all of that purple there, the magenta color once it loads, that's private land that's held that the BLM basically has been working with Sitla saying, hey, go find some property somewhere else. They looked and will exchange that property so that they can have that national monument be all BLM land. They said that the two things that they really looked at were acreage and equivalent value. That was kind of the determining factor. And so when Sitla looked around at the land, and Sitla, for anybody, it's the state institutional trust lands for schools. And so, so anyway, that's just kind of a little presentation on what, when I heard it today, and I just asked him, I said, can you scroll back into Tokerville? Let's see what's going on.
That was
So-
what, 9 or 10 sections?
Yeah, it's in section
Yeah.
9, 10, 14, 22, and 28.
Okay. That's quite a bit of land. Okay.
You see the darker areas over there in the purple.
Yeah.
Under the act that created Sitla, they got 40 acres in every township, or every 160. And so those are coming out and becoming BLM property, and they're just exchanging them throughout the state. We're getting some of it here in Washington County.
Exactly.
Right.
That was the last thing I had to
I'd
report
rather
on.
have the state control the land and the feds.
Hey, Afton,
So-
thank you
Yeah.
for all that. That's kind of what I like to see, especially so that our residents can hear
Yeah.
update. I got one question for you. The water main break in TRE, when is that going to be repaved? Do we know? Okay.
But
It was culinary
Yes.
water break. Okay.
and I think there were two.
Okay. Couple weeks for the repave. And then you mentioned the bypasses starting the asphalt when?
The 10th, I think, is when they.
It's next week.
Okay.
And it's just the middle section. It's not going to be the north tie end or the south end at this point. It's the middle section.
Okay.
After anything else?
I'd just say clarification.
Yeah.
The middle section being, it's like lacking 100 feet on the
Right.
north, and
All-
that's really from that Jersey barrier all the way down
To
to
Westfield.
Westfield's tie-in. So it's a lot.
A lot. Yeah, it's a majority.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a majority.
Okay.
All right, Afton, do you have anything else for us for our report?
It's a little longer than Rikers.
It's okay. Riker joined in too, so. All right, we're going to now open our public forum time. If anyone would like to get up and speak about something that is not on the agenda or what we haven't already talked to, now is the time. All right, we're going to go out of our public forum now and move on to our business item. Nobody wants to get up and talk. We're good. All right, we're going to move on to business G1, discuss some possible action on limiting the number of public infrastructure districts within Tokerville City. So this is the PID. We have one PID in the city now. We have one open, but we actually have more than that. Yes.
Background on this.
Go ahead.
Okay, so obviously Tokerville is growing. We've had a lot of discussion about development here, trying to keep it responsible, trying to keep it sustainable. Public infrastructure districts are part of it's Senate Bill 228. These are public-private partnerships. They allow for development in areas that's usually are large vacant tracts of land where development would be preferred maybe or ideal or could benefit the public in some way. So the public enters into a public-private partnership with these. It allows development to occur, and in the future, so they're bonded funds, and in the future, when residents move into that district, they have an elevated tax rate. They pay an extra line item on their taxes that go to pay back that infrastructure. So they don't affect other areas of the city so that people, in established neighborhoods are not paying for that infrastructure. They're paid for by the district, by the people who live in that district. so with this, as the mayor was saying, we have public infrastructure districts within Tokerville right now. We actually have 6 public infrastructure districts. They all, they're out west. In those districts, we are only exercising one of them at a time. But other cities have these as well. These infrastructure is obviously expensive. And so one of the things that we were discussing is the possibility or maybe the need to limit the number of public infrastructure districts within Tokerville to make sure, because PIDs run in 2 sections. One of these is putting the actual infrastructure in the ground, and the second is maintaining the infrastructure. Once these are established and the infrastructure is in, those become public, whether it's, the water system or whatever it is, it becomes part of our city infrastructure, and then the city takes it over and maintains it. So just in kind of looking long-term at this, I've talked to Attorney Snow about it. I've talked to the mayor. I've talked to members of council about this multiple times. And we just are kind of wondering, looking long-term, just wanted to have kind of an open discussion about public infrastructure districts and the possibility of maybe limiting them due to a couple of things, water being one of them, the ability to maintain the infrastructure. We want to make sure that we don't overwhelm the city by inheriting infrastructure. We want to make sure that we have a budget that can support that and sustain that. And so these are just kind of the discussion points that we wanted to. I had a long discussion with Attorney Snow yesterday. We clarified a couple of things, whether the liability could come to the city or not. It stays with the property owner to repay that, so it doesn't come to the city. Anyway, so those are just that's just kind of a little backstory on that. They are part of, like I said, Senate Bill 228. So they are encouraged by the state if the city can do that and have a developer pay for that development, but it ends up ultimately being taxpayers down the road. And so that's just an opener to
Perfect.
start the discussion.
And I discussed some with Joey today. You had a couple concerns on pioneering type agreements with water line upsizing, that type of stuff, or
The first thing that I want to talk about is basically how the PID gets paid back is by the taxpayers, right? So like the taxpayers in that area are paying a higher tax rate to pay back that loan for the infrastructure. If the property owner or the persons that are selling them parcels don't have to put that infrastructure in, then the property should be less
money.
to sell.
Your
But-
entry price.
In the 2 to 3 people that I've spoken with in the last 48 hours, everybody's still selling their property inside their PIDs at fair market value. Whether it be Hurricane, St. George, Tokerville, wherever it is, they're not selling these properties at a cheaper rate. So if the taxpayer is still paying full market value for that piece of property and they're paying a higher tax rate, what benefit does that person or that taxpayer get from the city using the PID?
The
one of
city
my-
doesn't
this is
use
a
the
big-
PID.
That's a big one of my biggest
The
questions.
developer uses the PID, and it comes down to a savvy buyer. If he knows that he's paying full
It's
price.
required by law
They have
for
to-
them to disclose that in their
Exactly.
seller disclosures. Nobody moves into a PID without understanding that they're
Right.
moving into a PID, and they agree. What they have is they have the same tax rate as everyone else in the city, and then they have an additional tax rate, and that goes toward paying back that infrastructure. And at the end of that, they go to, when the infrastructure is paid, they go to the same tax rate that the rest of the citizens pay. But they do pay for that. It is disclosed in their seller.
And
And they've likened it to saying like, well, in a lot of those PID districts, they are either like exclusive communities or things like that. So, I mean, they choose if they want to live there, just like
Right.
anybody else
Well, yeah,
chooses.
they can
where to
choose
buy or
to live
things,
there
so,
and do that,
yeah.
but my point is that the developer gets a huge break on putting the infrastructure in and still takes all the benefits by selling the property for that profit.
Yeah.
So that's
Yes.
one concern I have with the PID that I've found in the research I've done. The thing that Hurricane is fighting right now is they had a PID attorney come in and ask for a reimbursement on the pioneering agreement for upsizing lines that the city asked for upsizing. The upsizing was paid for by taxpayer dollars in the public and used from the PID funds.
So this is a Hurricane City thing. This is just a concern that I want to bring forth, right? Is that Hurricane City is now in a battle with the PID lawyer, PID attorney, counsel, or whatever you want to call it, to determine who and how upsizing them and reimbursing. Because if you reimbursed the contractor or the developer for that, the developer actually didn't pay for the upsizing.
Or it came out of PID money. Right.
So there's a big issue going on there in Hurricane with what's going on with that. And then a bunch of stuff, a bunch of little things that have come through is there's one PID in Hurricane that's actually open, and the developers said it's too expensive. They're done. They closed their project. Now they just have an open PID for that property that it's probably never going to be used, but there's no way to close that PID.
Well, they haven't borrowed again. They haven't
Borrowed
again.
again, so there's no bonding, but now
Right.
they just have an open PID,
Yeah.
and there's no way to shut it down. So they didn't put any clause in their PID documents to say if it doesn't bond in 10 years, then it automatically is null and void.
The Pineview PID documents do have that.
They do
provision,
that.
yep.
They do have that.
There's a fold-in provision in it.
Yeah. So that's good for Tokerville, because
Right.
if they don't get used, then they'll just disappear, right?
Yeah, a couple of things that make Tokerville's PIDs a little bit different than Hurricane. For one is the dollar amount, the number that they have. I mean, Hurricane's got $100 million PID. They have an $83 million PID. They have one that's like a $56 million PID. They have these massive PIDs. They have lots and lots of them. One other thing that I just want to point out with the one that Tokerville does have exercised, that has been super smart, is that in Hurricane, some of those developers were allowed to hold their funds. Anything that has been exercised in a PID in Tokerville, those funds have been held with the city. So the city has actually done the oversight of that. So we're guaranteed the infrastructure. We've paid for the infrastructure with those PID funds. The city has managed the PID funds, where in some of those that you're talking about in Hurricane, where they got in trouble, so I don't want to say in trouble, but just where it kind of got away from them a little bit, was allowing the developer to manage the PID rather than the city. So I just want to point out that's one
In the
good
future, the
thing.
developer
but-
will manage their own money. Like,
It depends on how it's structured. The deposit agreement could bring it to the city just the same. But when we put this on the agenda, just to be really clear, I am in favor of limiting the number of public infrastructure districts in Tokerville. I think it is super wise. Like I said, I think the maintenance, I think the water, I think just the management in general, but I do think that we need to limit those, but I also think we need to be able to look at them on a case-by-case basis in case there is infrastructure that could benefit the city. But we just need to have this discussion and see where council would like to go with it.
Yeah, it's tough because there's some major core infrastructure that the city may not have the means necessarily to build right now. And if a landowner wants it built sooner than the city's time frame, then maybe a PID is the way to do that. But
what is the infrastructure that the city would have to pay for on a new development? Like just an example, like would we have to supply that developer a water tank, or would because in my mind, if a developer wants to build, and another issue I'll talk about in a minute, that they can put their own infrastructure in and charge whatever they want for their
a
lots,
perfect
right? So-
example probably would be the Tokerville Parkway right now. I mean, that parkway, it traverses through several different property owners' property. There's a big benefit to the city to have that traffic bypassed from Tokerville proper and things like that. So in some ways, I look at that as a regional project that's being spearheaded by the city. Some of that is being paid for through a PID. But, there would be things like that the city may appreciate or want to have, say, a water treatment facility or something like that. There could be things
That's
that
a good
could-
example.
that could serve other places. But if it gets built, or at least the initial stages of it, and it's scalable, gets built by a landowner who wants to develop their property, I think the city can and maybe should look at that. But there are definitely some really PIDs, they bond, they go out and they borrow money and they build infrastructure. There is under the act, the ability for the PID to maintain and operate the infrastructure too. And I had a conversation today with, I will keep it an undisclosed attorney who specializes in PID work. And one issue that could become a problem is if it is a means by which the private side of the public-private venture can push growth and development to a state where if they are developing and building all this public infrastructure and dropping it on the city, we might not be prepared to maintain it.
Yeah.
Or struggle to maintain
So how does
it.
that maintenance work? Do they just keep reborrowing, or how does that ever get paid back? if
Well,
there's
no,
kids, like,
you could conceivably have a water subsystem built under a PID. It could have some sort of connection to our system, but if we don't want to accept the dedication of that subsystem, then that PID would have to operate it and charge their own water fees and things like that. And what is a concern, and what they've seen a few times up in northern Utah with PID, is if you've got a PID that is actually an operating entity, not just a borrowing and building entity, you've got this separate entity that's separate from your land use authority from the city, and they're making decisions that affect land use. And it's almost like you have a two-headed dragon that's a land use authority. They're controlling the water aspect of it maybe in that area, and kind of undermining. I represented Leeds for a long time. Leeds does not sell its own water. The LDWA out there does. And it was the most frustrating thing for a lot of councils and mayors and town attorneys, because you had development perspectives pushed through water policies from a private water company, almost acting like a land use authority where the town had that. And so that could be a problem too. I would tell you that there are, our ability to maintain, if a PID is created and it creates 8 new parks, the maintenance responsibility to the city of maintaining a park is substantially different than maintaining a road. It's got a 30-year life and not that much. I mean, you got to oil it. You guys who build roads probably can appreciate some of the maintenance costs, but it's not weekly and things like that. And so we probably need to look at, because as we see a slowing in the economy a little bit, you're going to see traditional lenders refusing to lend to landowners and developers big chunks of money in development loans. So if there's $30 million worth of infrastructure that needs to be built out there, and you can't walk into Zions Bank or Wells Fargo or State Bank of Southern Utah even and get a loan from them, they're going to be turning to the cities and say, help us create a PID. And then this PID will go out and borrow the money. I mean, a bond is just a loan to a government entity. And there is some concern here that we're going to get a lot more PID requests.
Mhm.
And it could create a problem with our authority as land use authority, problems with our ability to keep up budgetary wise with maintenance obligations of infrastructure that's just getting dropped on us.
Well, so I think I'm in the favor of limiting them as well, because the very worst thing you can do for infrastructure is not use it. So if you put in $30 million of infrastructure and there's never water in the pipes, there's nothing going on, and the asphalt's not being drove
Can you
on.
imagine a bunch of dry lines? What's the
Well, that's
That's the
another
very
thing
worst
that's-
thing. So I think limiting them and figuring out how you budget what needs to be in versus what is
Yes.
somebody's pipe
what is the
grade.
lifespan
Very-
of a dry line versus a dry line or a line? a water
The main
line that gets-
consensus is, so like there's another project that's in Hurricane, and the PID funds were expended, right? And they started putting all their road in, and they started doing all this stuff. There's like an 8-mile stretch where there's no infrastructure to the property. And they thought the PID was going to cover it, but it's outside of the PID. So then they got in an argument with the city that the city needs to bring it to but it's the developer's responsibility. So I don't think we have that issue in Tokerville. I think everybody,
We're not there
I think
yet.
the developer's smart enough to know that that's not what's going to happen. But that's another thing. So, and with that being said, and it falls right back to Ty, is that if we allow a PID to come in, their main thing was that we have an infrastructure list, and it has to be done in the list and prioritized in that sequence. So, I mean,
Well, our capital
things
facilities plan should
should
basically be that
identify that,
list,
yeah.
Probably.
Yeah,
But I think
but it, you know, if a developer wants to swing and use PID funds here to put that infrastructure in, you know, that needs to be the city's, it needs to have that list of priorities.
And
that-
so what I advised Afton was to have this as a discussion. I think she was already planning on having it as a discussion, but my recommendation is that we probably ought to, if the council is inclined to limit it or stop it, cap it completely right now, or limit it, or however, we probably need to pass a resolution with a policy.
Yep.
Because then each time any landowner comes in, we can say, this is our policy. Santa Clara City, they don't allow PIDs, which is fascinating, because one of the biggest PID attorneys is on the city council out there.
But not in their city.
Yeah, and Santa Clara doesn't have as much land open as.
They don't have as much land open either, but
Black Desert is a major PID, and the resort PID is in Ivans, and
Yeah,
Santa
Black,
Clara
yeah.
allow a PID, and they took the residential side of it. So, I mean, it's,
yeah, there's,
I'm not
they just
really,
don't allow them out
what
there
I'm
at all.
bringing to you is not like, I'm like saying we need to just completely shut them down 100%. I'm just trying to give you guys as much research as I've done to show you some of the ugly parts of it. But just like
Yeah,
you said, if the
Well,
city
I
needs
think
a
it-
water
Right.
treatment plant, I mean, holy cow, how can you not use that? You
Well,
know?
I think
Yeah, I think
just
we need to
saying
have a way to
nobody else.
consider-
I can't.
is not
We've got to
gonna be the
consider
right
them.
No, there's got to be some criteria, something that they can go through and check off. We're definitely not going to vote on anything tonight. We definitely
Right.
want to limit this, but we have to limit it in a fair
Very
way.
smart
I think
You
we ought to
know,
look at a
there's some-
resolution that's got some very general language that says our general preference is not to approve PIDs, maybe, and put some caveat unless there is some regional benefit to the, the infrastructure that is to be constructed with the PID more than just.
Because the PID requests are going to start coming in more and more and more. We're already getting like some email requests. We're getting people at PSR and things. But I think those are going to go up and up as private lending tightens up. I think they're going to look to this government.
Does every
Avenue.
every request have to come to the city council?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so
we have to vote on every
A,
one.
a PID cannot be created
Without
without
the city council.
sponsorship from the local municipality.
Ty, go ahead.
You got some.
When, with a PID, when is the city required to take over the infrastructure? How does that
See,
transition?
now, that's a great question. The way I've seen it done mostly, and I don't know that we have, well, we do in the form of the 6 PIDs, the Pine View Improvement Districts are all within Firelight Development, and under the big development agreement, the 90-page development agreement, it specifies when that public infrastructure has to be dedicated, given to conveyed to the city. A lot of cities will have with these PIDs, they will form them, but then they will create an interlocal agreement between the PID and themselves so that they don't, the city has the decision whether to make them dedicated or we can push it off, the maintenance and stuff
Which
like that.
which means they would still
Yeah, but-
maintain and
Yeah.
operate.
In Tocqueville City.
Some
we
of
do
that
not wanna
language
be in
in-
the business of
Yeah.
allowing a private developer to maintain a water system that services our public.
Right.
We're not,
Yeah, we
I think
need
it's
to,
very
we need to
necessary.
discourage
Right.
that at all
Right.
costs.
Yeah.
Ty, what else did you have?
Things like, for example, like the park, right? Like a park maintenance, like we can have some of those things that by development agreement say, we'll work in good faith with them to not assume infrastructure sooner than the city could maintain it. Like
Right.
we made sure,
Yeah.
I mean, and these
And we
were
have the
created
ability-
before I got here, but we've read through them, looked through them. There's,
On parks, we will only accept a select few out in Firelight. The rest of them have to be community parks maintained by their HOA. Not all of those are going to be public
yeah, we
parks.
worked with them to make
Yeah.
sure that we're
And
not going to
then-
get overwhelmed by that infrastructure. But most of this is looking forward of what happens if, you know what I mean? We
Right.
have a bunch
Now-
of requests all at once. And
Now,
Well, there's
not
two.
not getting into the argument of truth and taxation, but 'cause that's just
That's
another,
a-
but
yeah, that's a-
But as these developments that's gonna raise the taxes for our city.
For just
No,
that
not For
section,
the city.
not ours, not the people
Well,
that
it's
live
gonna be
here.
both,
No.
right?
So
Oh, it's
that's
gonna be
It's
strictly for
only
that.
that development area.
The taxes
Okay.
remain the same, and there's an extra line item.
Yes.
About.
No, I'm just talking about overall though, overall taxes,
Overall, you're talking about number of new homeowners
Yeah,
paying
which will-
property tax in
which will
Tocqueville.
help with our infrastructure costs in
Oh,
those
absolutely.
areas.
Yeah.
So, well, that'll offset some of, that'll,
Fees,
right, and all that stuff will offset
That-
some of
That
the
will, but
maintenance
there's
costs,
always
right?
like that thing of like, let's
Yes.
put all this public infrastructure in.
Yes.
And then they're still building houses without
Right.
them impact fees. There's always gonna be a period of time where they're ahead,
Right,
probably always be ahead.
yeah.
But
Okay.
just so you know,
Moving on.
though, a landowner who makes their land subject to a PID, usually when you go and bond, in the bond documents, the bond purchaser, the bank, or, you see, insurance companies investing their reserves, claims reserves in government bonds and stuff like that. They'll usually require a couple of years worth of interest reserve. But after the first couple of years, after they've given the bond money to the PID, they expect repayment to begin. And so the mill subrate gets added on to your property tax right then. And if 90% of that is owned by a landowner or developer because they're building a big project that has a 20-year, build out lifespan, they're going to be paying.
They'll be paying the tax.
They're going to be paying for some of that themselves, and then they're going to have to pass that on
To the consumer.
Right.
to the consumer.
Okay, so we need to, Ty, you have anything else?
I just, the only thing I would say is that we need to, I don't think I like the idea that it's just left up to council to decide. I think identifying some guidelines so that there's like a checklist of,
I
hey,
agree.
That was
boom,
one.
boom, 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 because we
Yeah.
already have them. And then to say that
Nobody else can
Lowe's,
have one.
Litchfield's,
Anybody else?
Anderson, nobody
Yeah.
can have them.
No, I agree with you.
But I think there has to be defined because really my concern would be we inherit infrastructure. You inherit $30 million worth of infrastructure. It sits there. We've had it. Well, guess who's got to go fix it when it's time to be used? The city does. And so it's like, I think you have to be very, very smart about how we allow them to be done and what gets built. Because the worst thing to do is to go fill a 2 million gallon tank with water and have one person on it.
Yeah.
If we're going to throw that water away, what is it? Like every 60 days, we're flushing it out and getting rid of it. So I think it has to be
One of the-
limited. I just
one of
don't know
the-
what that looks like.
One of the ideas that was brought up in some discussions is that was exactly how the consumer pays for it. If it's our policy that them lots or that property that's being sold inside of the PID to the consumer is 10% less than market value, then
I don't think we can
that
dictate.
discourages some of that, some of that.
I
don't know if we
I don't know
wanna
if you
be
can do
messing
that.
around in
I
free
don't-
enterprise and all.
Yeah, I don't
It's a
think
place
we-
to get
And
trouble.
Well, that
it
was
comes,
just a-
and it comes down to if the buyer is aware of the PID and he still buys in there, then he knows that it sucks.
Under the
You know.
act, the PID has to be disclosed and the previous year's mill subrate has to be disclosed in your closing documents. And so a buyer knows, and the buyer knows how much more
Is
they're going to be paying.
And-
And I don't know how many of the council was here, but the mill
We-
rate was we worked with them on the mill rate,
Yeah.
establishing what that was. So if the council did have input on trying to establish what that looks like. So
Do you want the
how do
direction to
we-
staff then to start drafting a resolution and a policy and put it before you, and then you can fine tune it and see?
Yeah,
mean,
I
is
think
that-
I think the best thing too would be a number of examples of other policies that are already in place to compare to,
We're
because
going to have to go out and look.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know very
You know,
many.
like-
I don't know.
I would like to see them comparisons
See,
myself.
but you guys are right. We're the perfect example of the difference between us and Hurricane because they're just letting everything come.
Right.
And it's going to be a dumpster fire at some point in time, probably. We don't know, but it looks like it.
Well, we can't say, we can't
Talk
say
about this
that.
list and
But I don't know how many cities are really thinking through that. And the problem is, as a smaller municipality, getting dropped with a maintenance obligation on $40-50 million of new public infrastructure could sink a town our size. A bigger city like St. George, they might be able to absorb it, not a problem. And so they may be much more willing and open-minded to allowing PIDs because
That's my concern
Yeah.
by, like you said, strategically allowing them
Yeah.
to happen at times, because if
Locations.
developers are all going at one time and it all comes online at one time.
So I did explain to Afton, the discretion of the council to create a PID is solely a legislative act. So we have a whole bunch of discretion. If a landowner, developer comes and asks the city to create a PID and we decide no, and they want to try to sue the city over that, they're going to probably lose every day of the week and maybe twice on Sunday. It's just hard. It's the equivalent of us saying no on a zone change. It's a legislative function. We have a lot of discretion. On other administrative acts that we do as a council, we do have to be more careful, and it is subject to judicial scrutiny. So I tried to explain, we probably need to have a policy so we can treat everybody uniformly. But I would love to see a criteria where we could at least consider things on a case-by-case basis if we do see a true benefit. Because if someone's just coming and asking for a PID so that they can develop 200 acres of commercial just for them way off someplace on the outskirts of town, then maybe we should say why. Where's that regional benefit to us types of things versus.
There's a lot of property, just that stuff that showed up today.
Like
For me, like in the checklist, I'm like, is it actually in Tokerville? I
Right.
mean, that's like number one.
Right.
Is there a will serve letter? Can they actually get water? Like, I think there's a way we could kind of neck it down so that when they do come
Also,
here,
that
there's
priority.
some criteria, like, okay, here's the need that's been shown. This is why it would work. And we could probably, staff they can figure out.
We're on it.
I like your point
Willingly,
is,
gladly.
under our capital facilities plan, I think ours is set on a 30-year planning horizon. And we have things in each 10-year period. Is the PID proposing to build infrastructure that's within the first 10 years of our capital facilities plan? If they're
That's a good
wanting to
one,
build
yeah.
stuff that's
Really be within the
That's a
first.
set for 30 years from now, but they want to do it right now, that's telling us that the developer wants to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our capital facility plan right now is a 1 to 10 year, and we have the first 1 to 5 years where we're building, and then we have a 6 to 10 year horizon.
Okay.
And so that would be, I think one of the criteria would be like, is it something that's in our 1 to 5 year that we've committed to build? And then the second thing is there's always going to be something that is not in our capital facilities plan, because our capital facilities plan
it's
is
a
for
growing document.
things that
It's a
we're
living
doing. Yeah,
document.
it's a living document that grows. And these are in large tracts of land that are not connected to the city. So it's not something we were planning on doing because we thought development would do it. I will say, so the way that development is running in the city, obviously, is that when someone calls and they have a hope and a dream or an idea, they come in and they meet with staff, and we call that PSR, Planning Staff Review. One of the questions that we are actually asking in Planning Staff Review is when they say, oh, we would like to, maybe this is our hope and dream of what we'd like to do in Tokerville. One of the questions that always comes up is, are you going to be asking city council for a PID if you move forward through the development process? I mean, we never discourage anyone from, they can put in an application to do something on their property, big or small. But that is one of the questions that we've been saying, is because that's one of the questions that a lot of them, quite honestly, are asking us first is, are PIDs allowed in Tokerville? Are you doing, and we're like, whoa.
Hey, wait, you first have to annex into our city.
Right.
Then
We're
it's
like,
not-
first of all, are you, like Ty said, are you in Tokerville? And second of all, let's slow it down. And so I think that those are some of the things that would be on there. Are you already in our city? Does this require us to annex land? Is it part of our annexation policy plan? Is this in our area of interest? Is it lots of things that go into it? But I just know that we are being asked regularly about PIDs. So I do think sometimes they're valuable, but at the same time, I think we just got to do it strategic and look really long-term at what that looks
I
like.
think we should also spell out something to do with the pioneering agreement, like in that policy.
Yeah, do we,
I think Hurricane City is going to come to it ahead and
Absolutely.
figure that out for a legally path forward without having to spend a bunch of money on our own research, but.
What we'll do then is staff, we'll start pulling some of these from other municipalities, see what they've done, see some people who've had PIDs. We'll pull some northern Utah, some here, smaller cities our size.
yeah, we might have to make a lot of it up though.
We might have to make some calls to like League of Cities and Towns, see if
Yeah.
any of them have any ideas of, because frankly, there's probably some of these policies out there, but not
I think we are on the
I don't
very,
think
I
we have
think,
any.
I think just like we were one of the first with PIDS, I think we're going to be on the first of people who are trying, of municipalities trying to get it under control. So I think we're on the front end. I think we're in a really good position. I think ours have all been very strategic, very smart, well done. They've performed well. So we don't have these problems that other municipalities have currently, but the main thing is we don't want them either. So, but we've done an incredible job with what we have. We don't have these situations of the other.
I think if we're proactive now, then
Oh, yeah.
we're not going to be reactive.
Yeah, this is definitely a discussion about getting on, just making sure that we're staying on the front of it instead of, we don't have a problem with them, but we want to make sure we don't. So.
Perfect. So you've got direction on where we're, okay,
Got it.
awesome.
Thank you.
It's going to take a little time, I think, but we'd like to see this.
Oh, yeah. it's
In
not
2
gonna be
weeks.
overnight.
Do we have
Wait,
anybody?
This is a big undertaking, huge.
Do we
No, that's
have,
Riker's pretty big, yeah.
do we
All right.
have anybody that's actually applying or
No.
asking for a PID at the current time, or do we need to
People have
put a
expressed- People
moratorium
have
in
expressed
place?
interest, which is totally different than an application.
Well, and it's,
Lots of
Well, I mean,
interest.
and from this moment on, because we've given direction.
We're
it's
good.
underneath it.
It's underneath it, okay.
Started down that path.
We don't need to put a moratorium in it? Oh, okay, okay.
All right, we're gonna move on to item G2, discuss the possible action, resolution 2023, an interlocal agreement between the city and Washington County for the city use of the Washington County Justice Court and court staff.
So Mayor, this has come up because we've been trying to work on addressing some of our codes, getting this criminalized. Attorney Snow's done a ton of work on this. We've met with county prosecutors. This is obviously a resolution in front of you. I'm going to have Attorney Snow take it over, but this was the first step in getting our code so we could get code enforcement, get it criminalized. And I just want to say that in doing this, what we've done, he'll go into the interlocal and all of this agreement, but where we are as a city, we have taken our top complaints that we've had, our top 10 codes basically, and we started going through those, reviewing them for enforceability, making sure we started with illegal nightly rentals, vicious dogs, nuisance ordinance, our drug nuisance ordinance. And anyway, we started working through our top complaints that we've had, abandoned vehicles, things like that, and started working on just going through those line by line and making sure that once we have this in place that we can do it. But Attorney Snow, we've had meetings, like I said, with the prosecutors, and we've been to the sheriff's office. We've just been all the way around, but I'll just let you kind of take it from there.
So this agreement, you can see the very first page is a resolution authorizing, adopted by the county commissioners, and authorizing Adam Snow as the chair to sign the interlocal agreement. This interlocal agreement, it was drafted by the county attorney's office. I reviewed it, made some suggestions, some suggested revisions. It came back to me. I approved with a couple of more tweaks. The idea was we were going to try to get this on the council's agenda last month. We didn't, but it did get on the county commission's agenda. And so it's been approved. So I would ask that unless we suggest or have really strong feelings about this, that we probably don't make a lot of modifications. To give you background, I have negotiated and been involved in the preparation of the exact same interlocal agreement for Enterprise City and for Virgin Town. And this is very close, if not, I mean, there's some small differences, but almost identical. I've also reviewed, this is the same type of base document that the county has the same agreement with Apple Valley too. So what I would tell you to do is if you'll scroll down to page 2 of this document, it's the first page of the actual body of the agreement. And you can see in there, it allows us to file cases in the justice court and to conduct prosecutions there, and that they will handle all of the monitoring of the caseloads, all the staffing within the court, the judges, all that type of things. And there is a lot that goes into. Enterprise City used to have their own justice court, and they used to have a justice of the peace, and they used to pay, and they had to have to have a court clerk, and they had to be recertified every 3 years. And I've done that 3 different times. From finally this last time, they said their justice of the peace wanted to retire, and they're like, we don't want to go through. And so they just switched to this, and now they're doing all of their prosecutions, and they're not trying to operate their own justice court. But you can see here this is how the kind of the compensation or the benefit or the trade-off is under Section 3. All fines and forfeitures collected by the Washington County Justice Court in relation to matters filed by the city in such court shall be remitted as follows: 50% to the city treasurer, so 50% to us, and 50% to the county treasurer. And that's how they offset their costs. They're running their court already, but there's going to be some increased cost to them. Probably not, but we're agreeing it's a lot cheaper than us we would be subsidizing operating our own justice court, even if we were keeping 100% of it. So I say, and this is the exact same percentage that I know that those 3 municipalities are getting. Under 4, other than the portion of funds described in Section 3, the county shall receive no compensation under this agreement. That was some of the language that I wanted very specifically. They couldn't come back and tag us with some extra costs or expenses, because frankly, sometimes they're regulated by the Utah State court system. And if the Utah State courts decide they want to put in a new security policy, and the county has to come up with $400,000 in new security equipment, what if they try to pass a surcharge on us? So I want to make it clear, that's one thing that's a little open-ended in a couple of these other agreements that I've seen. And this one, I'm like, nope, no other fees, no other expenses. The rest of it is pretty clear. Under 6, you need to see is we have to pay for our own prosecutor. They're not providing, the county attorney's office isn't providing a prosecutor. And we also have to, by law, if a person reaches a certain, or it cannot reach a certain income level, they're considered indigent and are entitled to a public defender. We have to provide the public defender. And so I have given the city an RFP for prosecutor, and I know that the county attorney has already kind of put the word out in the county attorney's office that if one of his deputy county attorneys wants to moonlight as the Tokerville city prosecutor, that there shortly will be an RFP coming out. I know of 2 attorneys who are criminal defense attorneys and who do have contracts to be public defenders. They don't get used very often, but they might get every 3 or 4 months, get a public defender job from Tokerville. It's the judge's decision. They have to fill out, the criminal defendant has to fill out an application and request it. Judge has to review it, and he decides whether they're entitled to a public defender. And if he says it is, we have to provide it. So those are really the expenses that we have. Is if we're going to operate in the county's justice court, we have to have our own prosecutor. We have to have our own public defender. They're going to give us a certain time each week when all of the city's prosecutions, and it's when all the small cities go. I think it's on Thursday afternoons. But they're going to do everything else. They track the fines. If someone is assessed a $250,000 or $250 fine, not $250 fine. If we were operating our own court, we'd have to be like monitoring that, who owes us money, who's made payments. Because what happens if the judge says, I'll allow you, because you hear this request from criminal defendants all the time, Judge, can I make that in installments, 5 payments? It's like, we don't have, they handle all of that, all the tracking, all the clerking, all the filing, everything. Most of it's all digital. We just let them keep 50% of the fine and fee revenue that is paid.
Heath, one question I had on that is then do we go through and have to update our ordinances just to say that we just follow their fee schedule? Or we just, that part I need a little bit of clarification on. It doesn't have to happen with this. We can have that conversation later. But that is one question that I had, is just how what we need to do to, okay, perfect. Thanks.
But other than that, it's very simple. It's
pretty
5-page
straightforward.
agreement.
It says the agreement it says it shall expire on January 31st, 2024, but it also says that it'll just renew automatically.
Yep.
Any questions? I think it's something we've been working on for 6-7 months now. It's been a while.
Thanks everybody for your hard work on
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
a lot of work.
For
I think
sure.
this is great. This is how we can start,
Yep. for sure.
having some teeth in our code enforcement. So
I'll make a motion to approve business item G2.
Would second the motion,
I
Mayor.
have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. All right, item G3, discuss the possible action on ordinance 2023, amending Title 1, Chapter 9 of the Tocqueville City Code to reference the Utah State General Records Retention Schedule.
So this is actually tied to both agenda items that you're going to see. And the first one is item E. It's just to add this, it talks about the way that we retain our records. And we follow state code. It just wasn't in here. And so we just wanted to add this language to it. The state, they've recommended it. So we're just asking that we would add this. Tocqueville City will adhere to the Utah State General Records Retention Schedule. It can be found on the Utah Division of Archives and Records Service website. Just saying that we follow theirs. We
Yeah.
don't just start
Perfect.
shredding or
This is
doing
pretty
things.
complicated.
So does it make it harder? We have to hold stuff longer now than we have been, or just curious?
No,
Not the
we're
same?
just following it. We just
Okay.
don't have it written down in text that we're following it. So we need to just put this in there.
A lot of it's moved to electronic.
Right.
And when we didn't have a very clear guidelines to follow, it's the question for like Daisy is, can I shred it? Or do I have to keep a hard copy? Can I scan it and keep everything electronically now? Now, under the records retention policy, we can, and we have to keep it, and we can even purge electronic records after a certain period of time. So-
Okay. Perfect.
So so that's what we're asking on this. And Daisy, if you want to leave this same one up, because we'll use it for the next also.
Okay, Ty had to step out real quick for just a second. Could we?
We have enough to vote still, or do you want to wait for him?
Yeah, I don't want if I want to, well, we got 3. Is that still a quorum? Still a quorum. Yeah, okay. So I take a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to approve business item G3 also.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it is approved. All right, item G4, discuss some possible action on resolution 2023, modifying the uniform fee schedule to revise photocopy fees.
You'll notice on item B right here, it says that copies and reproductions, any public record of the municipality may be copied or electronically reproduced for the payment of the city recorder, some amounts. Obviously, this has to do with grandma requests as well. Days, if you'll go to the fee schedule, we actually needed to update our copying, our black and white and color copying. Obviously, things have gone up and this and that. These are for grammar requests, but it also covers just staff time to reproduce those. So I don't even know the last time someone asked us for a copy, but we just have to have it on there. So we have to have it on the fee schedule and it's got to match. So anyway, so this is it. This is the ask, is that we raise
Okay.
our copies from 30 cents and then
10 cents to 30 cents and then colors are 50
50.
cents.
Yep,
Okay,
that's the ask. So-
pretty simple. Anybody have a discussion on this item?
Nope.
All right, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. We accept it.
Okay, we have a motion.
This is, deal with money, so we don't have to.
I don't know if there's a roll
Well,
call.
this is amending the uniform fee schedule.
Yeah,
So
we
I'd
don't have to
prefer
roll
it to
call.
be roll call.
You would? Okay. I have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. Any more discussion on this? It's from 10 cents to 30 cents and 50 cents for color. Ty, we're missing some high dollar stuff here.
That could be 100 pages.
It could be. It could add up. That could be $30 real quick. All right, I have a motion and a second. No further discussion. It's a roll call vote. We'll start with Chuck.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, let's go down to our calendar events. We have a highway cleanup this Saturday. We're going to meet here at Tocqueville City Hall at 7 a.m. All the public is invited to come out. I will be there early. I will have donuts and drinks for those who want to show up. So please come and have a good time. Tocqueville City Farmers Market, Saturday, August 19th. And I believe 9 a.m. It is the neighborhood farmers market. So let's I know July was hot and not a lot of people showed up, but let's make August a little bit better event. I think we'll have some good stuff there. And closed session, it's on the calendar. Do we need a closed session this evening?
We do.
Yes.
Before we get to that,
Yeah.
on the cleanup, are there any restrictions on who can participate in the cleanup?
What's the legality on that? Heath,
Like
is there
kids
a
and stuff like
kids? Is
As
there?
long as there is an adult
Yes.
present within.
That's how
And I think we normally say on the highway cleanup that we would like to have,
orange vest.
yeah, some sort of vest
Yeah,
or
they usually give us the.
caution.
I think you got
They'll provide,
Yeah,
okay,
they usually do. I used to pick them up
what's that?
every year for 5 years.
Yeah. So we
I've done all
will,
my best.
okay,
So I would ask staff with that, if you guys would have the signs put out on both sides of town to just say, hey, we're cleaning up, kind of letting
Can we
people know
move
what's
them, like,
going on.
all the way out to the junction for that?
we can go to
So-
Anderson Junction
yeah,
from the
so
bridge
move
to
one of them
Anderson
all the way
Junction.
out, So,
Yeah.
Like caution,
yeah.
we're gonna clean up, it's just something to give some people some notice.
That'd be great.
It's a good idea.
Okay, I need a motion to move into.
So moved.
For,
For the,
Just list them all. Discussion of character and professional competence, or physical and mental health of an individual, strategy session for discussing collective bargaining, strategy sessioning to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation, and strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, release of real property, including any form of water rights or water shares.
for the reasons mentioned by Councilman.
Don't we have to close
Yeah, we
this
need to
session
close.
first?
We
I
need-
can't close it, we just have to move in. We don't close, we just have to
Move it.
ask them
Yes,
to leave.
good.
Adjourn this and then-
So we're not adjourned, but we have to ask you guys to leave so we can move into a closed session. Joey seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just reading.
You don't have to go home, you just can't stay here.